that book talks about how if we teach people, especially poor people, how to read, then they will not be illiterate, but actually then they can go out and get jobs and be more able to actually get better jobs if they just knew how to read, you know, and how reading is important. So Paulo Freire made a real big impact on my life also because he was also promoting education, okay? Education especially for the poor, you know, and at that time in the 1970s, this is when actually we were almost getting into the civil rights movement, you know, and I was part of that, which was great. But again, reading was so important for me. And that's why I always, when they told me about this reading thing, and I think, oh my God, this is awesome. You know, it fits into what I really like to do, and that is promote reading with individuals. And I don't care whether you're, you know, 4 years old or, you know, I don't know if you heard that there is this 13-year-old, I think he's in Yale University. And the reason that I found out about him is that he's 13 years old, going to Yale, and he's suing the university because he wants to go to Africa to do research, but they won't let him go because he's too much of a liability. Then his mother signed some papers saying, I'll even go with him, you know, and accompany him, and you don't have to be liable, and they still won't let him go, okay? But can you imagine a 13-year-old who actually was reading 8th grade books by the time he was 2 years old, okay? You know, a prodigy. But these are the books that were important to me. And so I learned through books, through my experiences growing up in Chicago as a Puerto Rican, being actually isolated in a community that was predominantly Puerto Rican. I grew up in neighborhoods that were actually, when I was a kid, when I was 6, and I remember, we lived in an African-American community or we lived in a predominantly Puerto Rican community. So I grew up basically in minority communities, and that's all I knew. And I always make a joke that when I went away to the University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana, there were, at that time in 1972, they had almost 40,000 students, okay? And I tell people, I said, I had never seen so many white folks in one spot, you know, because every time you turn around, you see white folks, you know, and I wasn't used to that. I was used to seeing Latinos, you know, Puerto Ricans. I was used to seeing African Americans because where I grew up, there was African Americans and Puerto Ricans, the majority of Puerto Ricans. But I was used to seeing color, you know, brown, black. I was used to seeing white too. But to see white all the time, you know, it was kind of like, oh my God, this is, you know. But you adjust, you adapt, you know. And then I realized a lot of things is I am bilingual, and I am bilingual. I grew up in a home where we predominantly spoke Spanish. We were not allowed to speak English, okay? So we spoke Spanish all the time. We listened to Spanish music all the time. We ate Puerto Rican food. We had Mexican food, you know. So I grew up in that culture, but when I was outside, it was totally different because then I was eating hot dogs and hamburgers. I was listening, you know, to rock music. You know, I was speaking English all the time, you know. So I grew up in these two different worlds, you know. And to be honest with you, it was great, okay? It was just fabulous, you know. And what was nice about it is that I could take some things from my culture and say, yeah, I like to take that as being part of me, and say some other things I just didn't want to deal with, you know. And the American culture was the same way, you know. And so I am bilingual. I can speak Spanish fluently. Actually, I speak Spanish almost 50% of the time in my job. And I am bicultural. So in other words, I can speak English, you know, I can relate to Americans, you know, what America is, supposedly, I can relate to that because that's what I am, you know. I couldn't help become an American because I went through the elementary school, high school, you know, I went through the whole process, I went through the university. So again, I am bilingual, bicultural. And so what I started doing is to bring that message across to people, not just about reading, but I tend to do it through, for example, let me show you. Something like this. You know what this is? Have you ever seen this before? Pardon? Yes. What is it? You know what it is? Guido. Very good. Okay. You were close, but you were there. Okay. This is called a guido. Okay. A guido is an indigenous instrument. For those of you who don't, indigenous means Indian. So it's an Indian instrument. It's a gourd that grows in a vine, by the way. Grows in a vine. You don't eat it. You let it dry out, and it becomes very hard. Once it becomes hard, then you draw little ridges here, and you play it with this. This is not a hair pick, okay, by the way, just for your information. I've tried it, and it scratched my head, all right? So it's actually made specifically to play this. Okay? It's an indigenous instrument. I want you to keep that in mind, indigenous. You can also sing to it. Na, 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 na. Yeah. La, 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 la. So you can sing to it. Anybody want to hold this? Anybody? Oh, okay, man. All right. All right. Yes. Now, by the way, you're all going to hold an instrument, okay? I got plenty of them here. So, okay, now this one here is another guido. This is just a little bit bigger one. A lot of people tend to play like this. You don't play like that. You play like this. Okay? So you play the guido. Anybody want to hold on to this one? Okay. I see she's kind of... she wants me to. Okay. You know, we have different guidos. Like this one's made out of... this one here is made out of actually a bamboo. Okay? So guidos are made differently to make different sounds. So this will give you a different sound. Okay? Now, I can also show you... Where's my other one? Oh, yes. Hey, right here. Okay? Yes. You see? This is a guido, okay? It's, okay, a modern one, okay? A modern one, all right? We all have one of these at home. I think we all do, right? We all have a cheese grater. We all have a fork, you know. By the way, what it is that in Puerto Rico, in other Latin American countries, when we're looking for instruments to play, actually we can't find any, so we came up with this whole thing about playing a cheese grater. And it works. I tell you, it really works, you know. So the guiro is an indigenous instrument. The other indigenous instrument that I wanted to show you are maracas. Okay? Maracas, do they sound the same, yes or no? No, they don't. They're not supposed to, okay? Maracas are supposed to be, I think, I'm getting old, so I'm losing, you know, once you get past 55, it's like everything goes downhill, at least for me anyway. Yeah, high, there has to be a high, there has to be a low. I think this is high, okay, and a low. There has to be a contrast in maracas, all right? These are made out of wood. So if you ever go out to buy maracas, and if there's not a high or a low, don't buy them, okay? You're getting gypped. I'm serious. There has to be a high and a low, okay? In all the maracas. Anybody else? Anybody want to hold on to these? Awesome, right behind you. Yeah. Okay. Now, I have another set of maracas here, but these are made out of plastic, okay? These are made to play salsa, not the one you eat, okay? It's not the one you eat. This is more a music style, okay? A genre of music that happens to be, that evolved in New York City, but it has a lot of African influence, okay? A lot of Afro-Cuban influence, I should say. The montuno, the son, the cha-cha-cha, and so it has all that influence. So it's a little bit different. But again, even these are also high and low, okay? So there still has to be a contrast. Anybody want to hold on to these for me? Young lady, would you like to? Oh, that's okay. Hey, don't worry about maracas. Hey, I got plenty. So again, these are a little bit different and they sound different, okay? Can you? Thank you. You can pass them on. Oh, okay, good. Okay, so the other one, these are called claves, okay? These are not indigenous instruments. These are more African. But the reason that I want somebody to hold on to these is because if you hold them like this, you don't get anything, okay? If you hold it like this, okay, you get a really nice sound, okay? Anybody? How many of you are musicians, by the way? Are you a musician? What do you play? Piano. Awesome. Okay. All right. So that's really a really neat instrument. But I'm going to show you another one. You've seen this one before, right? Cowbell. Right. This is called a cencerro. Okay. It's an African instrument, okay? The only ones that the bells from Africa, there's actually two of them. There's a big one and a smaller one on top. So you play, you know. This one actually is, you can take off, I put a sponge in because the sound is very. Okay, if you put the sponge in. Anybody want to hold on to this one?